The rotors spin to a stop. The hatchway swings to the ground. And the man with the most powerful job on Earth steps into view.
Nobody else gets to do this. Nobody else in the entire world gets to transport heads of state like we do.
When the President of the United States flies from the White House, he travels only in an unmistakable green and white aircraft.
200 feet, 60 knots, 3/4 of a mile away. All you really see are the White House, the fountains, and you know this is it.
There's no room for failure, there's no room for incompetence, both mechanical and human.
Journey behind the scenes into a top-secret world few have ever seen. Fly on board Marine One. The President is on the move. The President is always on the move. Wherever the Commander-in-Chief needs to travel, a Marine Corps helicopter is always standing by.
The situation dictates that it's better for the President to travel on a helicopter. We're going to be ready.
Today, a squadron of Marine helos are deploying to meet the President at a school in New Jersey. The mission is a routine lift. But that routine calls for men and material in force. Aircraft must be kept fully fueled. Counter-assault teams lock down the landing zone. Communications link with the Secret Service and air traffic.
It's just not as simple as just flying to the backyard of the White House and picking up the President and bringing him someplace. Anything can change the dynamics of that flight. Anything can change the mission.
Radio, I'll just give you a thumbs up for the tail clear call.
At any time, the Marines can deploy the same in-depth support anywhere on Earth.
It's a global mission. I mean, it's not just the White House lawn to Andrews Air Force Base or White House lawn to Camp David. It's a global mission. It could be in the backyard of Windsor Castle. It could be a palace in the Netherlands, which means we either have to get there before he does or be in place right when he gets there.
Insert magazine. Make ready. Check your six. Holster. Insert weapon in the clearing barrel. Sure weapon is on safe. Weapon is clear.
Only one unit in the United States Armed Forces is entrusted with this mission.
Flashlight, radio. Anything to take care of?
Their headquarters are here. A tightly guarded airfield. A high-security facility inside Marine Corps Base Quantico. 30 miles south of Washington, D.C., on the banks of the Potomac. Quantico is home to the helicopters known as Marine One, and the hand-picked team of technicians, specialists, and pilots who fly the President of the United States.
167 Heavy, wind 07010, runway 13, takeoff.
HMX-1, Marine Helicopter Squadron 1.
HMX-1 is a special entity within the Marine Corps because of the job that we've got. My predecessor said it best in that we aren't a bunch of special Marines doing an average mission. We are a bunch of average Marines doing a very special mission.
No one at HMX-1 understands the duties and demands of that special mission better than Marine One's primary pilot, Colonel Raymond F. LaRue. His call sign, Frenchie. Even the President calls him the Frenchman. More than a pilot, the Colonel also serves as HMX-1's commander.
Once Air Force One pulls into the chocks, he's on the T.
With over 700 men and women at his command, Colonel LaRue runs the largest aviation squadron in the Marine Corps and one of the most complex.
3 and 4, you've got to spin and get to the tail of Air Force One in most expeditionary fashion and then shut your rotors down. We are Marines. And what does that mean? We grow Marines with an ethos of we can do anything. And keep throwing walls in my way, we're not going to back off that wall. We're going to find a way to go around it. And that's not just me, that's every Marine.
Marine One is not a single helicopter. Flying the President calls for an entire fleet. 35 aircraft, 4 entirely different models. 2 cargo copters handle support functions. The twin-rotor Sea Knight, often called the Frog, and the 16-ton Super Stallion. The pride of the squadron lives here, in a high-security hangar known as the Cage. These are the specially outfitted presidential helicopters the Marines call White Tops. The icon of the presidential fleet is the VH-3D, the Sikorsky Sea King, a helicopter that first entered service over 40 years ago.
The VH-3D is kind of the nostalgic presidential helicopter. That's the one that most people associate with the South Lawn or trips to the major cities with the president coming off, walking down the stairs.
With 2 turboshaft engines, these birds cruise at up to 150 miles an hour. The Sea Kings of HMX boast an outstanding flight record. Never once has Marine One suffered a mishap.
These are the most maintained helicopters in the entire world, by far. You will not see a better maintained helicopter anywhere.
They fly like a dream. They're very smooth. They're quiet inside. So quiet, in fact, that the president can carry on a conversation in a normal tone of voice, which is very unusual for a helicopter, for it to be that quiet in the back.
When the VH-3 flies an executive lift, the crew numbers just 3 Marines: pilot, co-pilot, and crew chief. Over 70 feet long, the helicopter has room for a dozen passengers, including the Secret Service, and a special seat for the Commander-in-Chief.
251, short body 260, and contact near approach 1324.
These are very unique aircraft. The communication suite that has to go on board, for all intents and purposes, it's a flying Oval Office to some degree.
Search number 320 is 9.78,000.
You also have to imagine that if you are flying the President of the United States around in an aircraft as low flying as, say, a helicopter, that there's other entities that have to go into flying that platform.
Those entities include sophisticated defenses to protect the President. DoD restrictions keep Marine One's features top secret. However, similar combat aircraft carry sensors to detect laser and radar tracking, electronic shielding, and onboard anti-missile systems.
I'm not going to really specifically discuss any of the aviation or aircraft survival equipment on board, but in the event that there is a problem that maybe we require support with, there are aircraft and assets on standby.
Okay, any questions on the sequence of events in the lift?
70 of the finest battle-tested aviators in the Corps are assigned to HMX.
One, flight is clear, 13 right, register.
After 3 years of rigorous training, 4 pilots will be tapped to serve 1 year at the controls of Marine One.
And I picked those pilots based on their capacity to make decisions, their capacity to handle situations when things aren't going as smoothly as they could. But it's certainly a complex decision. It's not one that's made easy, and it's one that I look very, very carefully at.
Flying Marine One may be the goal for these pilots, but for every Marine at HMX, the mission goes beyond supporting the President. It begins with the toughest test in military aviation. Flying warriors into the heat of battle. The same Marines that fly into the White House also fly into combat. HMX-1 was established in 1947 as the Marine Corps' first ever helicopter squadron. The unit was commissioned to develop battlefield tactics for rotary winged aircraft, helicopters. Today at Quantico, HMX Helos are dropping an assault team by fast rope.
My combat experience, it really just brought confidence to this job. It makes you relax a little bit more. It makes you understand the gravity of what you're doing here as far as doing your job under tough circumstances.
Getting in and out, fast and safe, that's the goal for these Marine pilots. Whether flying warriors into combat or taking the Commander-in-Chief to the White House.
Here we go, nose it over, let's clear up the river.
Hey, clear to the left. Ground speed's 36 and you're coming down through 150.
But transporting the president calls for more than just battlefield instincts.
NG's on the rise.
All right, I got the water tower in sight. I'll go ahead and make my turn.
Roger.
Would-be Marine One pilot Major Sean Quigley is about to land on the White House lawn. At the controls of a computerized, virtual Marine One.
Pressure looking good over the lips, and looks like your airspeed's matched up and you're coming down through 70 feet.
I'm flattered that I was chosen, and I only hope that I can continue to perform in a way that instills confidence in the commanding officer so that I can continue to safely transport the most important man in the world from point A to point B when I'm supposed to.
Transmission, all press and temp are in the green.
All right, I'm making my turn.
Roger.
From crosswinds on the South Lawn to the narrow piers of Manhattan's Wall Street heliport, the simulator can replicate various key landing zones.
All right, we got heat up and on.
It is on.
Power back, one back.
Power back, one back.
We spend a total of 6 weeks immersed in learning the various missions that we fly. We call that saturation training.
I want to pass the monument here, about 200 feet, 60 knots.
I'm only showing you pulling about 92% torque.
All right, let's get landing checks.
After 3 years of rigorous training, Quigley is on the brink of qualifying to fly the president.
Ground speed's 13 knots. Keep coming forward, and your tail's clear left.
Out of 70 pilots in the unit, only a handful get this far.
Oh, man. That chip detector, that's not too good.
Only 4 make it to Marine One.
All right, there's 30 feet, and tail's clear left. All right, coming down through 15 feet. Working on your tail. Here's your tail, mains. Lineup looks good. Keep coming forward. Down 5, 3, 2, 1, and brakes, brakes, brakes.
Got him.
Touchdown.
Okay.
Handle set, parking brake is set.
Time for Quigley to learn if he's passed his latest exam.
Okay, that was real good. I like the crew coordination on that thing.
Thumbs up.
The thing to remember too is in an ATOS, it does not
Next
talk
test
about
for the prospective Marine One pilot, landing on the actual South Lawn.
But either case, it's your call as the aircraft commander. So, good job.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Pilots are not the only crew members held to a standard of presidential perfection.
You want to fly the president, you're not going to look unprofessional. You're going to open the door in a professional manner, you're going to make your turns in a professional manner. It's got to be dead on.
Sergeant Nicholas Green is a Marine One crew chief. Part color guard, part ground crew. The crew chief handles the hatches, safety, and ceremony on every presidential lift.
It's a large weight on your shoulders. You definitely have a lot to stand up for when you're in front of the helicopter. You take 6 steps out, pivot, walk all the way to the back. make it look good.
For Major Sean Quigley, today is game day, the test that will make or break his chance of flying Marine One. Landing on the White House lawn at the controls of a presidential white top.
Flight 45, heavy close full at the Foxtrot, taxi right, Bravo to the ramp, a mile to the ground, point down, okay?
For this decisive flight, Quigley will lift off in one of the squadron's iconic helos, the VH-3.
Cleared for takeoff.
When you're flying the H-3, you really feel like you're flying a helicopter.
Rate 3 Early Tango County, turnway 4 left position and hold traffic crossing downfield.
It makes you do some work. You gotta be vigilant, but it's very rewarding in that it comes through for you every time.
You're on control. Thank you. Should be all squared away until we're hit the boards. Coming up on here, I got a gear light left.
The trip up the Potomac will take only minutes. But before this white top can touch down at the White House, Quigley must make an intermediate landing. Next stop, a restricted military base, a facility the Marines cannot allow to be filled.
You're on patrol. Thank you. Should be all squared away.
Presidential pilot in training, Major Sean Quigley has lifted off from a restricted airfield in Washington, D.C. Next stop, the White House. Quigley is about to face the ultimate Marine One trial. To become one of just 5 pilots approved to fly the president, he must nail the perfect touchdown at the White House. Not once, but 10 times.
All right, so I'm gonna set up from over here. Yeah, even though. Yeah.
Major Scott Volkert, veteran Marine One pilot, will monitor his every action. What Volkert reports will make or break Quigley's chances.
Not every person that starts the Marine One syllabus will make it all the way through to become a Marine One pilot.
There's 50, and you're clear left. Toes coming. Okay. Again, that's how you want to do it. You just keep that line right between you.
Quigley must navigate an invisible maze through tightly restricted airspace.
Okay, there's 200 feet. Okay, so I'm a little high and a little fast.
Security regulations and heavy traffic at Reagan National Airport confine Marine One to a narrow, low-level flight path.
There's your 200 feet. There's your 60 knots. I wouldn't go too far over there. You're probably pretty good here.
Flying around Washington, D.C. below 200 feet, it's an almost indescribable experience until you've done it. The first time you do it, you don't want to be the pilot flying. You want the guy in the other seat on the controls because you just want to sightsee.
And this is just good review for you. Okay.
The Washington Monument. The last landmark. Over 500 feet tall, it towers above the helo.
Okay, nice and easy. The ground's coming up, so it'll help you out.
Volkert watches closely as Quigley turns into the final approach.
There we go. Yep, you're good. You're coming down. Okay, there's 200 feet. 50 knots, that's fine. It's no faster than 60. All right.
It doesn't matter how many thousands of takeoff or landings that you have.
Don't cheat right on us.
You make that turn around the Washington Monument, you receive your landing clearance, and you roll fine on the South Lawn. That's when you fully understand the gravity of the situation, the responsibility that you have. Without exception, my palms start to sweat, get a little bit nervous.
Okay, I'm putting this line between my legs. Yeah, right between your legs. Tree goes down the right-hand side. Just remember, we want to be over that fountain by, 90 feet. Oh, a good visual is 150 and 50, so we're accelerating now. Good line up. Don't cheat right on us. Good. Now just keep coming down. Now cheating right. Looking good. Looking good. Just keep driving forward.
The South Lawn.
100 feet, 30 knots.
Barely 50 yards wide, hemmed in by towering trees.
Man, it seems like we're close to that blue spruce on the left. Don't worry about it. You're good. I'm holding altitude.
Quigley can't touch down just anywhere. His landing must line up precisely with 3 red discs.
Now cheating right. Looking good. Looking good. good. Just keep driving forward, keep driving forward. Clear to come left.
200 feet, 60 knots, 3/4 of a mile away from touching down. All you really see are those spots on the lawn, the White House, the fountain. You know, this is it. This is a big deal.
Okay. Now we're coming around. Yep. 10 feet.
Hovering 10 feet above the ground, one final maneuver. Quigley must rotate to line up the helo's wheels with the landing discs, each just 6 feet wide.
Okay. Now we're coming around. Yep. 10 feet.
When you are landing that helicopter, it's you.
15 feet back.
It's all you. And that is a rewarding feeling.
All right. 10 feet. Settle down to your 5. Looking good. And you're 20 feet back. Creeping it forward. Okay. 15 feet back. 10. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. There's the edge right there. Roll forward another foot. 6 inches. Brakes, brakes, brakes.
Brakes are set. Feet are off. Power's on way out. What do you think? It looks pretty good on this side.
Looks good on this side.
Okay.
Touchdown. Next challenge, the perfect White House takeoff.
Good APU. Two's coming back, you're flying the head. Rotate to the right side.
And after that, Quigley must repeat the entire process 4 more times before nightfall.
Keep right up to 105, fly straight out. Once we get out there, just like Anacostia, we'll do a button hook and come right back in. Come right out towards, basically towards the bridge over here. You know, be World War II Memorial.
Right over World War II.
Pretty much. We'll just button hook back. Just, you know, just inside the basin.
That's very humbling. Very humbling. It was harder than I thought it was going to be. I've ridden over there a couple of times, and that's pretty simple. You make sure the turns are matched, and you talk on the radio. This time, it seems smaller. The boards were smaller. The lineup lines were shorter. It was as if it was almost miniature.
All right. Yep, 100 feet, 30 knots to your next checkpoint is going to be.
A few hours later, Quigley tackles his final trial of the day.
100 feet right now, good altitude. I would hold the altitude.
A series of nighttime landings.
You know that trace, so just keep coming left a little bit.
This is the acid test for Marine One. But it will be weeks before Quigley learns if he has passed or failed.
You're not clear left yet, not yet. Now you are. Okay.
There's plenty of places that you can make some hiccups along the way. Different situations that just arise where you may or may not have what it takes, if you will, to be a Marine One pilot HMX.
15 feet, 10 feet.
Flying in and out of the White House is only one facet of Marine One's complex zero-fail mission. Presidential flights that begin overseas or across the country complicate operations. HMX must ship a detachment of helos by cargo jet to arrive before the president. Today, HMX maintenance techs are breaking down a pair of white tops for a long-distance flight aboard a C-17 cargo jet. Destination, Bangkok.
Normally, if we're going overseas, we'll take the VH-60s. That's a smaller Black Hawk variant that has a smaller cabin, but it's just as capable with communications and flight capabilities and so forth. But it deploys so well just with folding up a few blades. We can roll that thing right into the back of an Air Force C-17 with all of our gear and personnel, completely self-contained in one aircraft, and fly to anywhere in the world and be there and build up and be up and flying in just a matter of hours.
The United States is the only country on the planet that supports its commander-in-chief globally and does that with its own assets. There is no other foreign country, even when they come to this country, that bring their own assets to fly their commander-in-chief. That is a unique facet of flying the President of the United States. By the time that the boss steps off the bottom step from Air Force One, we're ready.
Next destination for the President and HMX-1, New York City. The President is coming to town for the United Nations General Assembly. Air Force One will get him to Kennedy Airport in Queens. Marine One will take him to Manhattan. He'll land on this narrow strip of concrete jutting into the East River, the Wall Street heliport. Like every mission, the work begins on the banks of the Potomac at Quantico and HMX-1.
Okay, the mission flying the President to the Wall Street pad today in support of the United Nations General Assembly, which makes things a little bit more complex for us in that there's probably going to be a whole lot more helicopter traffic in and around Manhattan than normal. Preponderance of that traffic is going to be centered around the Statue of Liberty, but there is some coming down the East River and going over to the Hudson River, so we'll be wary of the fact that it could be a very, very densely populated airspace today. Okay, the Wall Street pad, we've all landed. It's akin to landing on a ship.
3 days before the mission, a Marine advance team hits the pad at the Wall Street heliport.
You can really box yourself in if you land 3 before 4, and you can't really help it.
Major Rick Barnes and Major Kevin Duffy will block out the exact choreography for the presidential landing. To avoid calling attention to their work, the Marines dress in plain clothes instead of uniforms.
Stand this is where I want your nose wheel, and then as they're coming in, you direct them and then you get out of the way. Stand over here and hold this more forward and see. Tell them the number usually, and you can, but everything looks good here. This is where we'll put Nighthawk 2.
Across town from the Wall Street helipad, a full-scale military landing is underway. The U.S. Marines are setting up a beachhead at John F. Kennedy International Airport. For the next 96 hours, this secluded corner of one of the world's busiest transit hubs will be transformed into a high-security military base.
It's huge. It's very surprising to a lot of people, the effort that goes into it. When you think about just our squadron alone, we have 70 people here just for the helicopter movements. You got Secret Service, White House Communications Agencies, White House Military Office. It's a lot of people.
Colonel Raymond LaRue gathers his troops in the hangar at JFK for one last briefing.
We're going to be busy this trip. It's a little bit non-standard than our typical Manhattan trip. We are here during the UN General Assembly, so there's going to be a lot of security, a lot of cops, a lot of closures, but nobody can do it better than we do. Anything from me. You're in Manhattan. Enjoy the heck out of it is what I'm telling you, all right? Hoorah.
From Quantico to Wall Street to JFK, the Marines of HMX-1 stand ready. Tomorrow, the President of the United States comes to town. The south lawn of the White House, the President's backyard, a place for receptions and ceremonies where children roll Easter eggs each spring. But today, White House groundskeepers are rolling out a landing strip. With 3 red circular pads, they mark out the precise site for each of Marine One's landing wheels.
So they just weigh about 160 pounds apiece. They're half-inch aluminum, 6 feet in diameter. They serve not only as a visual reference for the pilot to come in and land on, but they also help distribute the weight of the aircraft evenly across the lawn, because if a huge helicopter, the wheels touch down in the exact same spot every single time, we'd end up with huge divots out on the south lawn. That's the president's backyard. That's the last thing we want out there.
The angle and location for the landing has been meticulously calculated for safety, ceremony, and the president's convenience.
What we're looking for out here when we set up is we want to align with the doors that go in the diplomatic room, exactly with the Jefferson Memorial down south, and that's what we're lining up on.
8 a.m. Marine One is due to pick up the president in 2.5 hours. The trip is an aerial relay race. First leg, Marine One will carry the president to Andrews Air Force Base. Air Force One will fly him to New York's Kennedy Airport. The last leg, another Marine One lift from JFK to downtown. The White House to Wall Street, 1 hour flat.
That's true.
20 minutes before takeoff, guests and the press corps are ushered into viewing areas around the South Lawn.
Every time we land on the South Lawn, there's hundreds of people out there that are seeing the president off or there to greet him.
At 10:24, right on time, the presidential white tops appear on the horizon. One helo heads straight for the landing pads. For the presidential pilot, the moment of truth has come.
Going into the South Lawn, you know, that's pretty nerve-wracking. You know, you think about the cameras that are on you, the number of people that are watching, and then who you're going in there to pick up or drop off.
First time I landed on the South Lawn, it was overwhelming. I couldn't believe I was doing it. We have to land on these little boards that are kind of small. I couldn't believe that I hit them. You try not to be overwhelmed with it because you still have a job to do, so you keep your focus, and then afterwards is when you sit down and go, you know, that was actually pretty cool, and I feel very lucky for being able to do it.
The crew chief drops the stairs, and the ritual march of presidential boarding begins.
You open the door, you step out. You don't know what's going to be there at your pivot point. You walk out 3 or 4 steps, make a turn, there might be a hole there. There's actually a hole on the South Lawn that we all try to avoid. And it's there, you know about it, but you never know when you're going to hit it because you're not looking down at your feet.
Marine One is not a single specific aircraft, but an exclusive presidential call sign. Only after the president steps aboard does this VH-3 become Marine One. The white top turns towards the southeast. Next stop, Andrews Air Force Base, home to the world's most famous plane.
H30 Tango, start your right turn heading 100, climb maintain 5,000.
In the sky above Washington, 2 identical helicopters join the president's white top in an aerial dance of deception. A security tactic called the shell game. Wherever HMX-1 flies the president, doubles Shadow Marine One's every move. A protective smokescreen to disguise which aircraft carries the man. Only the Marines know which of these green and white lookalikes transports the commander-in-chief. At Andrews Air Force Base, the world's most recognizable plane stands ready for takeoff. On board, her crew is poised and waiting for one special passenger.
Attention on board the aircraft, the President is 5 minutes out.
3 white tops appear on the horizon. Only one carries the boss. In the shell game, only one is Marine One.
There's a lot of stress involved in our job. It's not combat stress. You're not getting shot at. You're not worrying about supporting other Marines anywhere else. You're worried about supporting the President of the United States. That's a big load to carry.
Flight time, 45 minutes. Next stop, New York City. 4.8 miles south of the UN at the Wall Street heliport. Access to the pad is strictly controlled. Patrol boats sweep the harbor. Bomb-sniffing dogs and explosive experts check every vehicle. Secret Service counter-assault teams take position. The weather, mild. Wind out of the northeast. T-minus 22 minutes. At JFK, the helos of HMX-1 stand by, poised for liftoff. Marine One pilots and co-pilots take the field. Colonel LaRue will fly the President.
You walk into work every day with a smile on your face, not only because of the mission, because the mission's pretty cool, but as an old guy like myself that still gets to fly daily and strap on 3 or 4 different aircraft, it's absolutely exhilarating. Any helicopter pilot will tell you that it's probably the best thing you can do with 2 hands.
Air Force One begins final approach.
Cleveland Air Force One, flight level 330.
The pieces of the puzzle come together seamlessly.
11336. Air Force One passing 8.5 for 12,000, heading 360. Air Force One on the center.
I think the gravity of this job really hits home when you're sitting there just chatting, and then all of a sudden the big jet comes at you and the President walks down the stairs. So I think if anything, it makes you really sit up a little bit straighter and take your job a little more seriously. It's when those big engines are coming at you and that stair goes down.
You're standing there at attention for 30, 40 minutes at a time. You know, he says he's coming. He might stop and shake somebody's hand. He might work the rope line, and it may be 30 minutes before he gets there. You're subject to whatever. Rain, snow, freezing cold, excruciatingly hot. It doesn't matter. You can't think about, I'm really cold right now, I want to scratch my nose or move my arms or something. You can't do that. So you just suck it up and deal with it.
The President of the United States is in the hands of Colonel Raymond LaRue.
Nighthawk 1 and flight.
The lift is underway.
Doing this particular mission in Manhattan, first of all, it's a treat to fly around Manhattan. being one of the more majestic cities in our country, when you get to see New York City at 100 feet to 200 feet airborne, that's pretty exhilarating. But it's also very challenging in that some of the busiest airspace that this country has that we fly into. So we've got to always plan for contingencies as well.
JFK to Wall Street in under 10 minutes. At the Wall Street heliport, the pad is clear. The presidential motorcade waits for the last leg of the trip. The helos of HMX appear on the horizon. Now is the time for Frenchie and his team to earn their stripes. For this presidential mission, not one, but 4 helicopters must squeeze onto the pad. A concrete pier smaller than a football field. 2 troop carriers with press and support staff land first.
There's a certain portion during the final approach in a helicopter where you have to get into ground effect, which is an aerodynamic cushion of air, if you will. When you're coming in, landing on an elevated platform over water, you really don't get that help from that ground effect until you're actually on the ground.
Next to touchdown is a backup presidential white top. Only then does Marine One begin final descent.
When we get there, Wall Street pad is already clobbered with aircraft. Depending on how the winds are, we've got to get in there. We've got a very small space that we have to land in. But you only get one shot at it. It's a zero-fail mission, and that's why we rehearse everything, so that on game day, we make it seamless.
Touchdown. The latest in a 51-year string of perfect landings. Once again, the Marines of HMX have delivered.
You'll go out there and you'll have the most important person in the entire United States 2 steps away from you. He salutes you as he walks on, he salutes you as he walks off. That's pretty humbling. He's saluting not only you, he's saluting the pilots that flew him, he's saluting the Marine Corps, he's saluting the United States every single time he walks on and off. And it is pretty amazing. It's a pretty humbling experience.
Now, the Secret Service takes over. The president boards his limo for a high-speed run uptown. Transit time from the White House to the UN, less than 90 minutes. Moments later, the helos take off and head for JFK to prepare for the next lift. They're due back on Wall Street in just 43 hours. 1,000 miles away, an HMX team is on the ground in Florida, locking down the next mission. In Quantico, the squadron is ramping up for trips to Alabama and Kansas.
Even if there's not a scheduled lift plan, we'll take a helicopter wherever he goes. We're always there, whether we're used or not. And yes, the President does always, if he rides on a helicopter, he rides on Marine One, a helicopter from this squadron.
This is the job of Marine One. A military mission that never ends.
Wherever he needs to go and whenever he needs to go, we'll be there.
It's a great honor. It's an awesome experience, and it's something I'm very proud to be able to do, and it's something that I would never have the opportunity to do anywhere else other than here.